Welcome everybody to Startup Grind. My name's Lucas. I'm the host. Startup Grind's a global organization dedicated to educating, connecting, and inspiring entrepreneurs. Tonight we're doing another fireside chat. I should say at the outset, thank you to our sponsor, Alex Brown with Dickinson Wright. So if you need any help in the legal department, if you're a startup, thinking about contracts, equity, Alex Brown is the man to talk to. And also thanks to my day job, AWH, where I work, they also sponsor and help support the event and make it possible. I should say, if you ever need any software development consulting, check out AWH. Tonight, I'm super excited. Our guest is Claudius Mbemba. He is the CTO and co-founder of New, and I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
So welcome, Claudius.
Hey, Lucas, great to see you, man, and love the audience. Great to see so many good faces, good friends, and again, people. I hope you go into a little bit the background, but it's good to see so many good people.
Yeah. So Claudius, we met. It must have been like, I don't know, what year is it? It's 2021 now, and I think we must have met in like 2013, or like it's been a long time. Like I've known you a super long time. You were kind of a staple at all of the Columbus startup events. You were always pitching ideas. So yeah, it's really cool to like kind of see things coming full circle now. You're doing the whole founder journey and everything. I mean, what is this whole time been like for you, man? It's a crazy journey.
It has, and again, I like to definitely always go back to my Columbus roots because that's where I got my start in terms of startups, and really just that community really embraced me and just allowed me to really be present. And so I see a lot of good faces here: Theo, David, Warner, so many good people. So really excited to catch up with you guys and again get your faces on camera again. It's been a while, but you're right, man. We met probably back. I want to say probably a startup weekend event, most likely. 2013 seems just about right because that was 2012. I think was my first startup weekend, so that was around that time frame. And yeah, man, it's been a crazy journey. It's funny enough, it's come full circle in the sense that New as a company just went through Techstars Seattle. So Techstars is the parent company of Up Global, who puts on Star Weekends, and Techstars now puts on Star Weekends. And so it's been interesting coming from a Star Weekend to become a Techstars funded company and be kind of complete that circle. So it's been cool, man. It's been amazing.
Just, and for people who don't know, Startup Weekend is like a 54-hour business pitch hackathon kind of experience where people come pitch an idea and work on it over the weekend, try to create an MVP, and then they like pitch to judges and that sort of stuff. And it's funny because I feel like I got my start in entrepreneurship at that point. And like the one thing that one of the things I remember about you just from those days is that like you were the type of guy that had like a million ideas. Like it just seemed like you were able to come up with things. Like I don't know, does this sound true? This seems like it was a general impression that you were at some point gonna be doing this.
No, I mean, I definitely that resonates, and definitely I kind of hope that's what I gave off because I always kind of consider myself a jack of all trades.
Hmm.
I mean, even in my background, like man, I played sports in college. I studied computer science. I'm a very versatile person. I just like to have my hands in a lot of different things,
Hmm.
and I think that for me affords the ability to see and be able to combine different things from different um, aspects of life that I've picked up, and that allows for unique new ideas. And so, really, for me, again, it's a combination of taking the different experiences I've had and just seeing it from a new point of view or providing that perspective, which has really made or afforded me the ability to kind of come up with all these different ideas that hopefully some will take root. But it's been
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, a process of coming with different ideas, things are gonna not everything's gonna work out. Lots of ideas I had did not pan out. And so it's just that process of continue that path. So
Yeah, I'm almost curious to get your take on there's an adage or whatever, so advice that people say that like to be a successful entrepreneur, you only need to be successful with one idea, but typically you have to go through several ideas that fail before you can get to the one that's really good. And it almost sounds like you might have had some of that experience. I know we all probably have, just from startup weekend days.
Yeah, for sure, man. I like to say I definitely had enough failures that it actually drove me to go work in big tech. So after like 2, 3 startup failures, and just I like to call them learning lessons. I mean, ultimately they always give you insights on the next thing. And so after spending my time spinning cycles and trying to create profitable startups in college, I realized, hey, there's something missing here. I'm not grasping. I need to go spend some time to learn a little bit more. And that time was actually spent at Microsoft. So I spent some time learning, for me, how to build scalable technologies. That was the thing I felt like I was missing. As a technical co-founder, a technical person who wanted to be a founder, I knew that I needed to shore up in this one aspect. And that was due to learning from startup failures. I had 2 startups that didn't really pan out. And it taught me, hey, there was more I needed to go learn before I really kind of jump all in on this. And so that is what took me all the way to the Pacific Northwest from Columbus. So
Right, right. And now we should say you're in are you in Seattle still, or?
yep, yeah. So I'm in Seattle, haven't left. Moved out here back in again 2016 after getting an offer from Microsoft. Worked there for about 2.5 years, and then opportunity came with my co-founder to build new, and that's when I jumped ship and I was like, I'm gonna go back into startups, and been doing that since 2018, and it's been a roller coaster of a ride. Like, I could tell you some stories.
Oh man, and I know we're gonna definitely dive into that. I am curious though, just like Columbus and Seattle, I feel like people always joke about the weather for both cities. I was wondering, does it rain more in Seattle than in Columbus?
I will say Columbus gets all weathers, Seattle gets 2, and
Hmm.
for it's Seattle for its weathers. It's again, it's rainy or sunny, and it rains like 9 months out of the year, and then you get 3 months of sunshine.
Hmm.
But at least
Hmm.
with Columbus, you get to experience all the different weathers.
Yeah.
I'm definitely someone I like to say for friends who ask me like what are you gonna be? What are you doing? I'm always someone I like to say who's chasing the sun. I love
Hmm.
sunshine, and this gets me motivated, gets me up in the morning. I just love to wake up to kind of some sun rays, and so that's something I'm always chasing, and that is what has partly brought me out here for sure. Chasing more sunlight, even though sometimes it's not always there. But now Seattle weather is like I said, one of two. You're either getting rain or you're getting sun, and then
Hmm.
Columbus, you get all weathers.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So I want to go back now to sort of the journey and kind of becoming an entrepreneur. And
Mm,
I'm curious, like, when did you know that like this is what you wanted to do? At what age?
man, yeah. So that takes me back for sure. I like to say, so backstory on myself. I'm a immigrant,
Hmm.
immigrated to the U.S. with my family at the age of 7, going on 8,
Hmm.
and immigrated from Cameroon, Africa. So I'm originally Cameroonian, U.S. citizen now, but immigrated at the age of 7, going on 8. And as soon as we came to the U.S., it was pretty clear to me just the level of quality of life was so much better and different. And I quickly noticed that technology was a catalyst for a lot of that. And so I'm soaking these things up. Obviously, as a kid, it's not until later on that I'm in hindsight able to reflect upon it. But as a kid, realizing all these things that I'm able to, as an American or someone living in America, I can now afford. Whereas back in Cameroon, that was not an option. I'm realizing, hey, there's the potential to really, one, create a lot of good, increase the standard of living, and make the world, quote unquote, and that's a cliche, a better place. Because I, again, came from Cameroon, quote unquote, third world country, coming here, realizing this is a much more improved experience. I saw a lot of that, and I think in the back of my mind, it just kind of was there. And then as I grew, I started coming across different idols, and I was always interested in technology. Funny enough, the story about how I got into tech was, as a kid, my family was not wealthy enough to afford video games, but my dad had bought like my family a game system. So we had a game system, but we had no video games. So I actually learned to program. The first time I learned to program was actually learning to jailbreak my game system so I could download free games. Like, that's how I learned programming. It was just that kind of mentality of like, hey, I need to be able to do this thing, and I'm going to do it hella high water. And so I figured it out, and that's what got me hooked onto programming. It was really just that instant gratification. I think the statute of limitations passed, so I can say that and not get court-martialed for it. But yeah, that's what started my journey into programming. And going back to your question around where did I kind of realize I wanted to be an entrepreneur? Around that same time, I realized technology. I mean, I could see. I remember writing a paper. Actually, I wrote a paper in, I want to say, middle school on Bill Gates. I could see technology and technology entrepreneurs being the ones who were in the positions to create change. And again, it clicked for me. Being in America and being a technology entrepreneur means you can make change. And so that's what really, for me, I think spearheaded or directed my career trajectory and my life path, is realizing that, hey, if I wanted to be able to create the change that I want to create, I need to have these skill sets. I need to be able to do some of these things that it's been proven, if you do these things, you can get to a certain point. So I think that's what did it for me. And the understanding that, again, I can create significant impact and improve the world, but also be well off as well by being a technology entrepreneur, that really kind of did it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's super interesting. There's just like your story, there's just like so many things to your story, which are awesome. Like, having the journey of, immigrating to the US, it sounds like growing up with some modest means, being inspired about technology, and then like deciding to really pursue that. And I mean, dude, look how far you've come. This is crazy. You're really doing it, man.
Yeah, I mean, it just testimony to persistence and knowing what you want and going after it. I like to say this because I'm very fortunate for sure. I don't take it for granted. I also know that I've definitely worked a lot to get here. I'm constantly working nonstop. Like being a startup founder is lots of 100-hour weeks with for me, very little thankfulness. It's just, you just got to continue working. And so I'm putting the hours for sure. But I also know I'm very fortunate. I had great parents and great family to kind of set the bar, and have siblings who, I'm the oldest of 5, including myself. And so we've got, oldest of 4, including myself. I've got 3 younger siblings. And so setting the bar and setting the expectation for them is definitely pushed me to want to make sure I'm always doing well, so they can see and set an example. But yeah, man, it's not for lack of trying that I've gotten here. And so it's been a lot of work, and I'm forever again grateful. But I also know there's a lot more to do, so I can't stop now.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So I want to turn a little bit to new, and kind of how you got in with this. Like, how did you find your co-founder? Like, when did this like idea kind of pop up?
Yeah, so New was actually the brainchild of my co-founder, Kwame. Kwame was an Airbnb host who was actually working at the Boeing company at the time and running a bunch of side hustles with Airbnb. So it was essentially partaking in what's called rental arbitrage at the time, where he would lease places and then put them up on Airbnb and make the profit the difference of renting short-term, but also paying the long-term lease. And at some point, you realize, at some number of properties, you realize you can't clean those all, especially if you have a daytime job. And so that's where the idea dawned on him. He was actually at work where there was supposed to be a cleaner coming to clean a place that a guest was coming to stay at, and that didn't happen. What ended up happening was the guest checked into a dirty space. The whole situation blew up on him, and he learned from that experience that, hey, there needs to be a solution that can handle this. And so that's where it came in. Where I come in is, at the time, he was actually looking for a technical co-founder. We actually had 2 co-founders at the time. So Rawan and Kwame were looking for technical co-founders because none of them had that capability. And so reached out to their network and were interested in finding someone that they could work with. I myself at the time was, again, still at Microsoft, coming up on that 2.5 years. This is a very critical part. Before coming into Microsoft, I had set a deadline for myself. I was going to be there no more than 3 years. So I had already promised myself after that, because if you've ever worked at a big tech company, there's the golden handcuffs is a real thing. Like, they give you enough stock and offers to keep you there forever. So I didn't want to be stuck there forever. I wanted to make sure I had a time limit. And so Kwame and Rawan came calling around the same time. 2.5 years in, I was nearing my 3-year limit. And so it was very interesting for me. I had already been theorizing I was going to go do something in a startup at that point. It was either going to be something on my own or something I partnered with somebody to do. At the time, I didn't have any major ideas that I was like really passionate and gung-ho about. But when they brought this concept to me, immediately I thought, yeah, this makes sense. Like, this is like a no-brainer. Why is no one doing this? And so I went to talk to some friends who ran Airbnbs and just got their feedback. And everyone who I talked to was just so adamant, like, hey, I need this. Like, can you get this to me tomorrow? And I was like, well, we are in service. And so it really just gave me the how to put this, the confidence that this idea had legs. I myself was not a host, and Kwame was. He had the idea, the kind of epiphany, and then I validated with other people who I knew were also hosts, and that's how we kind of all met. And we met actually through mutual friends. So this is an interesting aspect of our relationship, but we had not known each other. We ran in similar circles, but we didn't have direct communication. It wasn't until a friend, when they were asking for recommendations for startup people, my name got thrown in the hat, and they reached out to me and said, hey, like, we would like to chat with you about this idea. And that's how it all came to be. But I think for me, it stems back to always being present. As you mentioned earlier in the call, when I jump into a community, I always try to involve myself and get myself known, exposure, so people know what I do. And so when it came down to it, they were asking for, hey, I'm looking for someone who's technical, who's interested in doing startup, and again, is willing to put in some years on this. And so again, my name got thrown in the hat, and it just ended up being a perfect fit in terms of our relationship, our dynamic, but then also the idea was unique enough for me to want to come on to. And the one last thing I'll add here is that being a technical person, you're often, I'm actually going to give a talk about this later this month, but being a technical person, you're often approached about different ideas. People want you to work on things and build things. But my thing is, one, that happens too often for technical people to like actually do it. Where I see value in people approaching me is if they've done the hard work, or at least they've done some work to validate the idea. Kwame and Rawan came to me with a concept in market. There was no technology behind it, but they had a service. They had actually delivered some cleans for some customers, and that proved to me that there was demand here. More or less, they were able to validate the concept, even in a minuscule MVP, like getting the thing up and running. And that helped me feel a little more confident in going down this route. Not only was the idea good, but I knew the co-founders that I was going to be working with can execute. They can at least try to execute. And that goes a long way to attracting a co-founder who's technical. And this is for, again, my non-technical people. I always say, again, if you can validate that you have something here, whether you get a customer to pay for it, or even just like create a small MVP that helps convince that technical person who you're trying to bring on that you want, you're going to be able to execute regardless of if they're on the team or not. And that really helps them feel more confident with the decision. So
wow, that was an awesome answer. And I feel like there's several things that I want to unpack a little bit more with it. So one of the things you mentioned was that you had known the co-founders sort of like in the community, but weren't super close to them. You know, you hear different advice about finding co-founders where some people say, oh, you know, the best case scenario is you've worked with them in the past and you know them extremely well. I wonder, like, it sounds like things are working well. Like, to what extent do you agree with that advice?
I actually really do. I think it's really hard to find co-founders. Okay, I guess here's my other caveat. If you can find someone who's humble, I like to say I'm a humble person. My co-founder, I've come to work with him now for several years, and I like to say he's a humble person too. We're definitely both driven, but we're humble enough to understand where our limitations are and where we come into. So I think the challenge with a lot of people finding co-founders who they have never worked with before is in that there's a mismatch in, or there's not enough, I guess, humbleness in the person they're trying to bring on, or somebody in that relationship is not humble enough to make it work. We're both, again, we've since then grown our friendship tenfold for sure. But I think, and obviously being a co-founder, it's like a marriage. You're literally tied to that person forever. So we had to, like, you gotta definitely make work. But the other component to that is that not only are we humble, but we're also open with each other. We're not afraid to like have those hard conversations with the knowledge that we're not trying to harm the other person. We're really both in it for the benefit of the business. And so that is something that has really helped us. If you can find a partner who you feel, one, is humble enough to acknowledge some of the stuff that you've done. So for example, let me give you a concrete example of what I mean by humbleness. When I came into the business, as I mentioned, my co-founders had already began working on this idea. This wasn't like the impetus beginning. They'd already began working on it. So when we had the conversation, which is something you're gonna have to have around stock or equity allocation and how do we split up the equity, I wasn't coming in like, hey, you guys have already started this thing. I need 50-50. Like, I need you guys to give me 50. I recognize the work they've done. And so I didn't come in asking for 50-50 or 30.
Yes, for 70-30, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
No, yes. Yeah. I valued their effort and their work before I came in. And I wasn't coming in trying to claim half of the business just because I know the technical, like I knew technology was going to be what scales this business and what drives the growth. But I also knew that these guys had worked on things. And so again, that's that humble aspect of things. Someone who's coming in, realizing there has been work done here and is valuing it and realizing, hey, I'm not trying to be I don't need to be the point person here. I don't need to like take up all this value. And so that's an aspect of the humble aspect that I wanted to touch on. But then on top of that, again, it's building that relationship and growing that trust. And so having the ability to have those hard conversations, that's the other aspect. You need to be able to trust each other enough to talk about hard things. We've actually done some, actually part of Techstars, we've done some executive coaching. And this is not like we don't have a therapist long-term. We had some one-on-one time with executive coaching, which helped us work through some of these things as well. But we weren't shying away from that. We were open and able to both have those hard conversations, which I think is very necessary if you're going to be a co-founder with somebody. Again, it is like a marriage. If you are having a hard time having these tough conversations or feeling like you can't express yourself, you're going to resent the other person and you're going to want to leave. But if you can have those open conversations, you can air out the dirt and feel fine, then you feel comfortable in the space. And I think a lot of challenge with people who are, again, the reason they say you should co-found with people you've worked with in the past or you're friends with, is because you're comfortable with them to have those conversations. If you and I were childhood friends, we would have no issue, like, I wouldn't say cussing each other out, but having a disagreement, we'd be able to do that. But a lot of people who have adults, more or less, who are meeting their co-founders or co-founding something together for the first time, they fear stepping on each other's toes or offending the other person. And when you have that, when it's so difficult to express yourself, you feel like you don't have the space to be able to do that, and which leads to resentment again, which leads to walking away. And that's the number one reason most startups fail, I think, is because the co-founder drift or someone walking away because they don't feel like they have the space to be heard or to speak up on some of the things they have. So I think, again, for me, things I've noted on are finding someone who's humble, but then also finding someone who you're comfortable having those hard conversations with. If you can find that person or those people, then I think you should have a good. I see no issues in terms of finding a co-founder with that or co-founding a company with that person. You should be able to have a good relationship long term. But if you can't find those two things, then it's going to be challenging.
Gotcha. Wow, that's another really great answer. So I also want to talk about sort of this transition, because you were at Microsoft and you mentioned sort of like these golden handcuffs and like, making the leap is a hard thing for anyone, right? Yeah. And you mentioned that there was some like initial traction and validation that kind of convinced you, but like, I guess like at what point did you decide, okay, I'm going to make the leap and like, this is enough validation. This is what I'm seeing. And this is really something we could go after.
Yeah, man. I mean, I want to clarify. I had made the decision to make the leap way before I got into Microsoft. I already knew within 3 years I was going to leave, so that was already a given. I knew I was gonna be out. The question was just whether or not it was going to be something that I was working on in terms of my own thing, or something that someone else brought to me. And for me, what helped me realize new was the thing I wanted to work on, was the, how do I put this? The problem we're addressing. It's often said in startup lore that you want to be tackling, or you want to be providing a painkiller, not a vitamin. You want to be solving a strong pain point. And if you've ever met a vacation rental host who just wants like a passive income stream, cleaning is the number one thing they don't want to be doing. Like that's the hardest pain. They can manage everything else, messaging, setting up their profile, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to it, the brass tacks, the cleaning is it's not sexy. People don't want to do it. And I realized it's such a strong pain point for hosts. Again, everyone I talked to who was a host was literally like, I will pay you right now to do this. Can you do this like now? And so that is that aspect of validation and traction, having people like offer you money right now to transact on something that they just heard the idea for, because they know the pain point so well and feel it, is a huge, strong validation. Like I said, I validated the idea. I talked to people who I knew were vacation rental hosts. I just asked them like, is this something you would use? And again, always was getting a resounding yes. And that helped me really just feel more comfortable in that decision. It is always hard to make the jump. I like to say I'm definitely a little bit of an anomaly in terms of people, in the sense that I see the difficulty in not making the jump, if you get what I mean. I mean, it was easy for me. I could have stayed at Microsoft. I would be doing really well, still thriving, I'm sure. I was in terms of engineer at Microsoft, I was really highly I was a high producer. I was producing at a high level and doing really well though. And enough so that when I mentioned to my managers I was going to leave to do a startup, everybody tried to convince me to know and offer me new positions to stay and all these kind of things. But ultimately, again, I already knew that I was going to be leaving. This was done well before coming in. But when it comes down to when it comes down to making that jump, again, I like to think of it, or Jeff Bezos has this whole regret minimization framework for how he makes decisions. And I like to think of it in similar mindsets. If I was 80 or 70, looking back at my life, would I feel good about staying at Microsoft, or would I feel bad about not making that jump and seeing what that could have offered me? And so for me, I'm, again, very fortunate in the sense that I'm a young person, and I always knew that, hey, if new doesn't work out, one, I would have learned a lot, but two, Microsoft is still always going to be there. Like, I have the skill set. I've already done it. I already know I can do it. I have the skill set to produce at a high level at a big tech company. So what's stopping me from getting that job all over again? Sure, it may be some lost opportunity in terms of moving up the rank, moving up the ladder, but that's not my goal. That's not what I want in life. I don't care to climb the ladder at Microsoft. I care to make an impact in life. And this is something that's going to allow me to be able to do that. And so I would have been, again, remiss if I didn't make the jump more than if I stayed at Microsoft.
Gotcha. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of the operations or mechanics of the business, if you will. I know you're CTO, but I maybe you can answer some of this stuff. And I know that also, like when you're a co-founder early on, you probably wear a lot of hats. Is that true for your experience?
Oh, certainly, man. Yeah. If you're not wearing a ton of hats, I'm not sure it's a startup, quite frankly.
Right.
Or you're a really well-funded startup. That's one of the other options.
Right. So, talk to me a little bit, or talk to us a little bit about the sort of the journey to getting funding. Like, was this thing funded like early on? Like, how was that process for you?
Oh man, yeah, this is another hour-long conversation. So I'll try to keep it short. It has been a journey, man. Like, and I'll be real here. I like to be frank. I hate not giving people the real, as I like to put it. So
Yeah.
new again. I joined in 2018, and New was founded late 2017, like December 2017. I joined in February 2018, so shortly after its founding. knew already had a in-market service with some customers, small number of customers, but I had done enough validation to feel like this was a strong business and this was a strong pain point we were solving. And so when I came on, I actually was of the mindset that within short order, we would be able to fundraise, we would be able to hire engineers, we'd be able to grow this business, scale beyond just our Seattle market, and then soon start rolling nationwide. What I didn't know is it would take us almost 4 years before we get to do that. I was more or less, I came in with certain expectations, and as startup land always does, it just bashes you over the head with the expectations. And yeah, we took, not for our own lack of trying for sure, we were fundraising consistently every year for those 3 years prior to our actual raise, which actually just happened late 2020. What was happening though was me and my co-founders, this is our first venture scale business. And we had no idea that we were approaching the fundraising experience incorrectly. We just knew we needed to raise funds. And I like to say, back in the old days, I want to say maybe early 2000s, fundraising used to be an art. Now it's a science. I would say now it's a science because there are specific steps to fundraising. And these are things we did not know. And step number one is you need to find a lead investor. We were hitting up every angel in the community thinking that if we pitch this person well enough, they'll be our lead investor. And what we kept hearing was from majority of people in the Seattle ecosystem was that, hey, you've got a great idea here. I think it's got legs, but come back to me when you have a lead. And that was just, that cycle kept repeating back and back over and over. And another aspect of it was we would pitch somebody, because we, again, didn't really know what we were doing. We were taking every feedback as gospel and trying to change our business in a little bit to steer in the direction of the feedback we got. Now, more experienced fundraisers realize that's not what you do. You don't do that. You steer the ship and you keep on your course because you know your business better than investors do. Investors, yes, they have the funds and some have experience, but they're not in the day-to-day like you are. And so one thing that we were doing was that we were, I like to say pogoing, we were back and forth talking to one investor, getting feedback, implementing this, talking to another investor, getting opposite feedback, implementing that, trying to please everybody, and it wasn't working. We didn't raise funds as much as we tried. It just wasn't working. Up to a point back in 2019, and I've told this before, I'm sure, the company almost sputtered. We almost shut down the company because in 2019, we were on our last leg. Like we had, I want to say maybe 10 grand in the bank left, and we had payroll that we were making, and it was coming down to the wire. We actually had to talk to our team. Thankfully, a lot of them have really bought into the vision and the team, and we're willing to make sacrifices to prolong our runway. We had team members take pay cuts. I actually myself, me and my co-founder, have not taken a dime in terms of salary compensation from the business since we started. So till this date, I have not been paid. I have not made money.
Wow,
incredible.
I'm just
trying to sustain. But again, I digress because 2019 we had a really down year in terms of the funds, and we were running low on cash. Our employees took one for the team, quite frankly. And the short order, we were able to get into the Techstars Seattle program, which gave us some cash infusion, plus one of our actually only angel up until that point doubled down on his investment, and we raised another 40K from him, I believe, and that gave us enough cash to be able to last into, again, the Techstars investment, which then gave us enough runway into 2020, and then we raised our funding, our seed round, following the Techstars experience, which I want to make sure I touch on really quickly. We raised our seed round in September 2020 following the Techstars experience. I like to say that if it wasn't for Techstars, we may not have raised. And I said it for two reasons. One, we joined Techstars because we knew we were not doing well fundraising. We actually joined with the explicit reason that we wanted to learn how to fundraise. And Techstars, if you've done any research on them, they pretty much wrote the book on fundraising. Brad Feld works with those guys. There's man, I'm blanking on the name of the book now. but he has a really good book around venture investing and what founders and startups should know as they're going to seek venture investment. I need to find that book because
Is it Venture Deals?
Venture Deals. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Venture Deals literally is the best guide. And then also Techstars has some Techstars written books around fundraising. And so these guys wrote the manual. And so we were able to learn from them in that process of going through Techstars how to actually execute a fundraise. And that afforded us the ability to, after the program, actually put our best foot forward and finally raise as you're supposed to. Again, it's a science these days, and we did not know that back then when we were trying to fundraise the first couple of years. And I think there's an aspect of, how do I put this? An aspect of education around minority founders. This is something I've been trying to preach and help others who look like me who are coming into this space, anyone really, but largely people of minority descent do not have this education. And me and my co-founder, all my co-founders are Black, and we just didn't know this. We didn't know this is what you're supposed to do. And so learning that, I've been trying to spread the knowledge a little bit more. But yeah, we raised after our Techstars experience because we learned how to actually fundraise. We learned the steps and the science of fundraising, and we were able to raise a seed round that helped us expand our business. So backtrack, it took us, since 2018, it took us roughly 3 years to finally execute a fundraise. Well, since 2017, it took us roughly 3 years to finally execute a fundraise and succeed at actually doing that. So it's not been as rosy. I hope I'm painting a very real picture for a lot of people. As I said, I haven't been paid, I haven't made money myself in this business since we started. We have employees and we pay them, so always pay your employees. But as a founder, be ready to take sacrifices and be ready to more or less eat shit for a while.
Yeah.
I hope I can sit on this call.
Oh yeah, no, you're good, man. That's I feel like that's a very it's not like 100% of the time, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard founders, it's essentially the idea is like founders get paid last. It's like,
Yep.
you have to take care of the business has to run, and that
takes your employees.
Yeah. And like, that just takes a tremendous amount of grit to, stick to that vision. And, you mentioned sort of being at this point where the business at one point had like 10,000 left in the bank. My question is, because like people talk about this experience where you're kind of like, potentially this is the end of the business. How do you get yourself through that and keep motivated in times of tribulation like that?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. I think for me, a lot of it just stems from having a positive mindset. While we were in that situation, I knew it was dire. I always had this back in my mind feeling that I knew things were going to be okay. We were going to make it work. My co-founder and I have been our business has been very scrappy from the beginning. Like I said, we were largely bootstrapped for the longest time. And we've had to make things work. We've had to stretch nickels into dollars, quite frankly, and just make things work. And I knew we were going to be able to do that as long as we had the backing of our team, as long as we had our team willing to go on this journey with us, which two of our biggest values as a company are transparency and communication. We want to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. So we're pretty transparent about the state of the business. Everyone understands where we're at in terms of our cash in the bank, our runway. People know what's going on. And that, for me, is good because they understand what the business is facing, but then also they have buy-in when it comes to decisions we're making. We're not making these decisions unilaterally. We're asking for feedback and buy-in from the team. And because of the transparency and because we're communicating these things, they're able to stick with us. So when we had that conversation with our team, and I knew people were on board with our decision, again, with what we had to do, which is, again, cut our burn so that we could make the business last, like, I knew we were going to be okay. I knew we were going to figure it out. And there's definitely been some touch and go for sure. I mean, Techstars could not have come in. We could have missed out on that, and that could have been the end of New, quite frankly. So a lot of things have aligned, and I've definitely seen that, and that has provided us the opportunity to continue growing on this business and this journey. But to answer your question, what do you do when times are dire? How do you kind of steady and keep the faith is really just, I think, that having faith and having a positive mindset and positive outcome. The other thing I will say is also realizing that the downsides aren't the end all be all. Like, yes, our business could have failed, but does that mean my life is over? No, I still have a lot of things I'm doing. There's still a lot of things that I have going for me that I can go into next. And that is going to help, this learning is going to help me with the next venture or the next thing I do. So that, I think that's part of that positive mindset, realizing that even in failure, there's benefits to it, whether it's taking that failure and lessons and applying it to the next thing. There's positives to it. Always seeing the bright side is something I would say, but then always pushing for what you want. So again, I could see the bright side, and hey, if our business failed, I've learned a lot from this business. I've learned a lot from this experience. I can use this as the next thing. Hell, I could go get my job back at Microsoft if I really needed to. But I also didn't just sit on that. I was like, all right, we still need to make sure this business survives. So what are we going to do that? Taking the steps and actions to ensure that what you actually want is what you get.
So I have like 10 more questions that I have like just in the back of my head, but I also, this is kind of like, I'm going to maybe say one or two more, but I would love for some questions from the audience too. If people are thinking, I know Dan put one in the chat, which we will definitely get to. But I guess like, it's crazy to hear like this thing has come full circle on so many different levels. You know, now I think I saw like you Crunchbase, it's like you guys have raised over like 975K. That's the last information I had. And like, yeah. I guess how do things feel now? I mean, there's so much stuff we didn't even touch on, but like,
talking COVID or any of that stuff.
Yeah. Like, I mean, for example, COVID, like what, because I imagine, because the business relies on sort of doing cleanings for Airbnbs.
Yep.
Were you caught in the headlights of that, or like what was that experience like?
Dude, that was the biggest deer in headlights situation for us. I mean, the rest of the world. So it wasn't just us dealing with it. Me and my co-founder jokingly say if we were bigger, New might have died during COVID. So we're very thankful we were kind of at our size. And I say this because a lot of companies who were bigger were hit really hard by the pandemic, especially in the hospitality and tourism space. Again, airlines down, travel, tourism, all these things were hit hard. And so us being in the vacation rental cleaning space, our business is again tied to the vacation rental market. What we saw in the initial stages of COVID was just that, again, and you saw this with Airbnb, nobody was renting, nobody was doing anything, no travel, all of that was stopped. And I won't go into the whole, because I want to make sure I save time for questions from other people. We'll go into the whole spiel of what we faced during that year. But I like to say COVID was both a blessing and a curse for our business. A blessing in the sense that, in my mind, it made cleaning sexy. Everybody was worried about sanitizing and getting things really COVID cleaned and making sure that this thing wasn't being spread. So it made cleaning sexy, which is part of our business, sanitization, but it also killed the hospitality and tourism market, which is the other part of our business. And so what we saw, though, again, because we were small, is we were able to kind of bide our time. We were using this time to build up and really kind of, again, we raised to get the cash reserves to be able to make sure that we can expand into the return to quote unquote normal and be able to capitalize on this wave of one, prioritization on sanitization, but also two, this wave of travel. I myself have been feeling the itch, and I'm sure a lot of you are, having been cooped up at home for so long. People are dying to travel. And so there's going to be a huge influx of people moving about as soon as vaccines are more rolled out and things are open. I think the summer is going to see a huge travel surplus. And so we are perfectly positioned to capitalize on that development, on this growth that's going to happen in terms of vacation rentals and travel, and also the prioritization around cleaning. So we definitely see a lot of positive headwinds for our business, in the sense that, again, now we've got cleaning being sexy, but also travel being really lucrative. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to, again, the fundraising aspect was for us to be able to expand our operations. So during COVID, we actually, again, raised our funds and we expanded early February to our new city. So now we're not just in Seattle, we're also in Phoenix, Arizona. And we're going to open up another market here soon, our third market by, I want to say summer's end, to be able to, one, prove out our model across 3 geographically different markets. We're subsequently looking to raise more funds. As soon as we do that, we're going to start to do a more strategic rollout. Our goal is to do a city a month of expanding to new places. And so we're very optimistic, and we're very, how do I put this, bullish on this business and this concept and this idea. We're not out of hot water by any means, don't get me wrong. We still have a lot of learning and still a lot of growth to do. We are just now actually figuring out our growth on the customer side, which is the vacation rental owner. We're just now figuring out that channel. We're just like, for the longest time, we're growing off of word of mouth and referrals, but that is not a sustainable method. You need to figure out a way to actually acquire customers. And we just, within the last, I would say, month, we're able to figure out what that is. And so now we're building that playbook. So when we expand to a new market, we can run this playbook, get hosts, get cleaners, and start running that market. So to answer your question, we're bullish on the business, but yeah, we've been hit hard by a lot of different things. And I, again, didn't even go into half of it.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, I have like 10 more questions at least, but I promise we'll try to keep it to an hour. And I do want to give people a chance to ask questions. I'm going to start with the ones in the chat, but feel also in between questions, feel free to unmute if you so desire.
Yeah, say hello. I'd love to hear your voices.
So Dan Rockwell, by the way, hey Dan.
What's up? What's going on?
Hey,
what's up, Dan?
I knew I could count on you to unmute and ask a question.
So I'll even give you a face. I am
there you go.
We'll explain that later. This is how it works now. Work in your room.
Right. I like it. So Dan, I guess your question, you can ask more than one if you want. But
yeah, I have 2 questions. First,
okay, go for it.
What did you learn from me, if anything? Did you learn anything before you went out?
I mean, obviously, like, if Lucas is painting me as the idea man, I must have learned it from Dan, because Dan is the consummate ideas man. He was always at Star Weekends just being the best MC and closer and just putting out idea on idea on idea. So Dan, I took some ideas from you.
Anything from me? What did you learn?
How to build ideas, man. That's what I'm trying to say. I learned how to be an idea generator from you, for sure.
That's cool. That's cool. And then you traveled, you graduated, and you kind of did a kind of a crazy thing that I think a lot of people haven't done before. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna go travel the world for a year. I was like, oh, okay. What are you gonna do? Travel. And so I want to know what did you get out of that, and how did that help you, or what did you learn from the travel?
Dude, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I try to add that in as much as I can in conversation, but it doesn't always, I don't always get the opportunity. Yeah, that I was, again, very unique in that I finished credits early. I had the opportunity to leave and graduate early, but I wanted to graduate with my class, and so I postponed my walk, and I had roughly a semester to do nothing. I could have either actually gone back to Microsoft and started early, or done another internship. I decided that, hey, I was going to just travel. I wanted to see the world, and so I did roughly, of that semester, I did roughly a 2.5-month solo backpacking tour across most of Western Europe and a little bit Eastern Europe. Hit about 10 countries and 14 cities, and it was amazing. What I learned from that, and this is something I try to preach as many people to do, because everyone knows this, but I think not many people have actually experienced it. Traveling just opens up your worldview. Not only that, but for me, that was the first time I had traveled independently and alone. Like, I literally just had my backpack and a duffel bag, and I was going to be gone for 2 months. So it let me learn how to navigate the world on my own. And I had some failures there, including spectacularly missing my first flight from JFK to London. I missed that first flight, and I was stuck in JFK for another week because I was running late to the plane. I didn't realize you had to get there for national flights 2 hours early. I was like, oh, an hour, I'll get there in time. Typically took the JFK, I took a New York train to try to get to the airport, and that did not work. But things like this, you learn these things. I really learned that if there's anything I want to do, all I have to do is put my mind to it and get started. I actually have this tattooed on my arm here. Make sure I'm showing the right arm. It says the sooner you start, the sooner you finish. It's hard to read. It's actually in code. I got this in Barcelona, but it's my personal motto. People often delay getting started because there's so many different things, whether it's planning or ultimately it all comes down to fear of like just doing the thing. But I've often found, and again, my personal motto is that, and what helps me get motivated to actually just get it done is the sooner you start, the sooner you finish. And I always say that because it's such a amazing thing. Again, I learned a lot of this while traveling. I learned to be just independent. I learned responsibility. It just really was I learned more about myself because I was alone. I was traveling alone, often times just doing things on my own. People don't really take the time to be by themselves as much. And when you travel alone, sure, you meet people, but you often have to be by yourself and just understand yourself. You get to understand yourself better in that process. And so, yeah, I recommend it for everybody to take some time and just travel. I think once in your life, you definitely should travel, do a solo travel for some extended period. That way you can experience what I experienced. Thanks, Dan.
Awesome. Such another cool story.
Oh, I also have a website. I also documented my travels, by the way. This is something I would also recommend you do. So I have a website. I think it's Claudius in Europe. .azurewebsites.com. I put it on Azure, and you can find it there. And that's it's some videos and vlogs of my time there, and it just was amazing. Met so many cool people. I got to just explore the world, meet so many diverse people, and expand my horizons.
That's awesome, man. So Melissa Fisher.
Hey, Melissa.
Hi, by the way. Feel free to unmute if you want to ask your question about the name New, or I can read it out.
Hey, Claudius, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
You've come a long way since Ohio State. I just wondered about the name New. Obviously, it's not terribly descriptive of your business. Has that been a hurdle and a challenge, as everybody says, we don't know what you do and nobody's going to know for sure what it's all about? Or is it good in that it doesn't pigeonhole you and you can pivot as you need to if you need to start cleaning something else or doing something different to Airbnbs? How did you guys think through that?
Exactly. I think it's definitely for us, it's more of a ladder. The versatility in the word new. So how we thought about it, how the name New came to be was really, so New was actually a different company at the time. It was called Tidy LLC. But if you know, well, if you haven't heard, Tidy is a very trademarked word. So we unfortunately were not able to use that name as our business anymore. So we're thinking about different ways of what this business meant. And so obviously, again, doing turnovers, your goal is to make it like new again. And so the word new kept coming around. And what we found is that when we looked into different meanings, my co-founder Kwame also really liked that we like to sometimes call ourselves Uber, Airbnb. He also liked the way Uber came up with their name. Because if you think of Uber, the word means like superlative, like the best experience, the best thing. And so he wanted to actually do a riff off of the leveraging of a German word for the business. And so when we thought about it, new and the word, I think, tidy or clean in German is neu, which is what new is in the US. So NEU is what it's pronounced, or neu is how it's pronounced in German. But with the phonetic sounds, it sounds like new, which was, again, very, how do I put this, representative of our business and what we wanted to convey. And so that's why we went with the name New. New Solutions Inc. is actually the full name, but we just largely go by New. And yeah, I mean, hopefully that answers the question. I don't know how else to
that's a
add to that.
That's a good question. And I saw on the website the slogan is "Good as New." I like that.
Yeah,
I like that.
There's a lot of punny words. You can, like, we call our new hires the newbies. So there's a lot of puns in there, so that helps too. Definitely good to have a punny name.
Nice. Let's see. Well, let's see how. So one of the questions is, how did you finally get a lead investor?
Yeah. So again, I credit this to the Techstars experience. Once we went through that process, after our demo day, which went virtual because we were actually the first class to go half and half virtual, half in person, half virtual, due to COVID. So Techstars has switched their process up that year, and all demos, instead of being in person, which an in-person demo requires you as an investor to be in that city, so you have to fly there or have someone who's going to be there to be your eyes and ears on the ground, which limits your potential reach. But because the program went virtual this year, which is another, again, aspect of me saying, hey, like we've been very lucky in this, because Techstars went virtual this year. We had to do recorded demo pitches, and those pitches were then circled across the internet to investors in more places than just Seattle. And so with that, an investor in Chicago called Newstack VC saw our demo day pitch, reached out to us and said, hey, we'd like to ask a couple more questions, engage you guys. We engaged for roughly about a month before they offered us a term sheet. And we weren't actually even at the time looking to fundraise. Again, this is coming off the heels of COVID. We were really just like, all right, we got to bunker down and make sure we have enough cash to outlast this, because we want to make sure we survive. And so our lead investor came from interest after our Techstars demo day pitch, which allowed us to then raise a subsequent round. But it was, again, another spark of luck in the sense that because the program went virtual, videos were made instead of in-person demo days, which then could be circulated across technically the globe, and people outside of just the Seattle area could reach out to us. So.
Somebody asked, what is this tech startup class? How does one sign up? I think that's referring to Techstars.
Techstars. You want to give them that? I think you.
I was gonna say, yeah. It's just it's an accelerator, and there's a bunch of them. You know, Techstars is one of the big ones, but
yep.
You can go check out techstars.com and apply. They have a bunch of different accelerators for different verticals.
Yep.
Geared towards all sorts of different things. Like you could go retail, or I don't even know. There's so many Techstars. It's one of the biggest like startup accelerators in the world. So
yeah, plus one. It's similar to YC. YC is very specific and to the Bay Area and to largely enterprise SaaS. Techstars, as Lucas mentioned, is they have a lot of different programs, and they have what are called like HQ cities. So Seattle's a headquarters cities. There's one in New York. There's one in LA. I'm pretty sure there's one in the Bay, but they're everywhere. And there's also virtual ones. And now that everything is also gone virtual, I'm pretty sure you can apply to any of the other Techstars. So if you're living in Columbus, you could apply to the one in LA or Seattle and get accepted there based off of your application, obviously. But what I would quickly add to that is the value of accelerators is that they give you a network of investors and other entrepreneurs. And so Techstars has been building this network for decades now, quite frankly. And so we were able to, because of that network, tap into the investor network that they have and showcase ourselves to them, which gave us the opportunity to fundraise. I would highly recommend, if you are a under-resourced founder, aka this is probably not your first time, or you're in a situation or a location where you don't see a lot of resources for startups, to reach out to accelerators, because these are great places to tap into a network of founders and startups that you can really benefit from.
So we have so many questions coming in. So one question is, I'm not sure if I understand this one, but David is, I guess, what did all your tech talk conversations teach you? Do you want to elaborate on that one?
Yeah, so Claudius, I remember you going crazy on the LinkedIn things where you got to do like, what did you do one at Bloomberg, or was it NASDAQ or whatever? Like, yeah. What did all those teach you? Was it mainly just expanding the network? You getting more talking time?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, David. So David's alluding to in my how do I put this? In going full all in on the startup and the CTO role, I've had the opportunity to speak at different events, and I have become part of a community called CTO Connections, which is getting together CTOs from large companies, well, large and small companies, quite frankly, because our company is still kind of small, and letting them mind share and share information as well as insights that they gained in order to elevate the community. And so I had the privilege and pleasure of speaking at the NASDAQ in New York back in, I want to say, December 2019, sometime around then. And it was an amazing experience to be able to speak to other colleagues, people, CTOs. I've spoken with the CTO of like Shopify, of change.org, which has been amazing to really speak on the same level as these more established businesses, which I hope, again, fingers crossed, New gets up there in short order. But it's been great. David, I think for me, the benefit really was network expansion, but also learning. I gained a lot of information from the talks that happened there. So you saw my talk, but you didn't get to see that I saw like 20 other talks while I was there. So it was really good information. I always say, whatever role you're doing, you should always be seeking to upskill and to learn. I call myself a lifelong learner because I just always consume information. If I wasn't doing anything, I'd likely be reading or learning or being on the computer doing something, learning. So I'm a lifelong learner in that regards, and so that opportunity was just another opportunity for me to practice lifelong learning.
Well, I want to ask, just kind of in wrapping up here, you know, where you're at now is obviously awesome relative to where it was at, you know, a couple years back. But I imagine there's still things that you need or things you're trying to figure out. What would you say, you know, if you had an ask for the audience, or just what are some things that you think people can help you with, resources, anything like that?
Yeah, and I will be very frank. I alluded to the fact that we have kind of figured out our growth channel for hosts. For us, it's actually become sales. We thought for the longest time that marketing, because a lot of our customers, the hosts, operate like consumers. So we thought it was going to be B2C marketing that was going to get us, for example, social and Google ads, and we're still going to engage in those. But what we found is that if we get a targeted list of our customers, because vacation rentals is a very regulated business, you need to register as a business owner to own a vacation rental. We can get these lists of customers. If we get that list, we can reach out to them and really drive a sales effort, which actually leads to more conversions better and faster than trying to run marketing efforts. Thus far, that's what we've experienced. We were able to drive conversion faster doing sales efforts than the marketing. This is something I never thought we'd be doing. I never thought we'd be doing like hard sales. But one thing I've learned is that my misconceptions I always have misconceptions, and I always get proven wrong. For example, the earliest part of my career, I thought marketing was not needed. I didn't think you needed the market. I just think you need to know how to build things. That's why I went into computer science. But I quickly learned, even if you could build it, if you can't market it, people are not going to use it. So marketing is very important. Sales is very important. I want to make sure I make that clear here. So now we're embarking on sales efforts. And if you guys have any resources or connections around
And I think we're frozen.
building a good sales effort, if you guys have anything, let me know.
All right, you came back. It froze for a second, but the answer was if
sales.
Sales resources.
Sales resources, yeah. Sorry
by the way, that's also my background. So if you ever want to jam on stuff, I'm happy to just you know, problem solve or whatever. But yeah,
let's do it. Let's connect.
Yeah, like I mean, this was so great, and I feel like your story's super interesting. The business is interesting. Like everything, you know, it was super cool to talk about. I can't wait to do this again, maybe like 5 years down the line, see what happens. But dude, this is super great to catch up, if nothing else. So thanks so much for coming.
No, thanks for the offer, man. Thanks for the invite. It's amazing. Like I always love to put Columbus on my back whenever I'm somewhere. So it's always good to see you. You didn't see me earlier. I was wearing my Ohio State t-shirt. I put on my new t-shirt for this, but I'm always in something Columbus related. And so it's just great to see familiar faces, and really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you guys again. And I'll be back home in short order. Hopefully once I've been vaccinated, so that's great. I'll be able to travel soon and stop by Columbus. And so hopefully I get to see some of your faces in person, and we can grab a beer and just chat some more.